Hello, I'm Amit Pal, Director of Communications here at the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Welcome to this week's episode of Ask an Atheist.
And I'm Sam Grover, a staff attorney here at the Freedom from Religion Foundation. This week, we're going to be talking about honoring and remembering atheists in Foxholes, just in time for Memorial Day weekend.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but before we get to that, we actually have an exciting announcement. Earlier today, FFRF filed a lawsuit against the Arkansas Secretary of State over the Ten Commandments monument that was just placed on the Arkansas State Capitol. So as some of you may remember, back in June of last year, the state put up its first Ten Commandments monument, which would have prompted a lawsuit, except that less than 24 hours later, someone ran it over with their car, destroying it. Well, a new Ten Commandments monument is now back up at the Arkansas Capitol, and the Freedom from Religion Foundation, along with the American Humanist Association, the Arkansas Society of Freethinkers, and 7 individual citizens of the state of Arkansas have now filed suit to get this removed. Ideally, the state would concede that this religious monument has no place on government property, but instead, the state will likely go the way of a city in New Mexico, which earlier this year had to pay $700,000 in legal fees for unsuccessfully defending a similar Ten Commandments monument. So stay tuned for more information on that as the lawsuit unfolds. Now, back to the topic at hand. There's an old myth that there are no atheists in foxholes. However, we can disprove that notion. Joining us in a few minutes via Skype is Steven Hewett, a former police officer and Afghanistan war veteran who returned home with a combat action badge and a Bronze Star, only to find a Christian flag flying at the Veterans Memorial in King, North Carolina.
And following a long court battle, the city agreed to stop flying the Christian flag and to remove a cross from a kneeling soldier's statue. Right.
But before we connect with Steve on Skype, we want to tell you about FFRF's Atheists in Foxholes memorials. So we've got 2. Back in 1999, we erected our first such memorial in the Lake Hypatia, Alabama area. The monument is dedicated to the many atheist members in the military, atheists in foxholes, as well as all freethinkers, atheists, agnostics, skeptics of any persuasion, who serve in the U.S. military.
And in 2015, we at FFRF dedicated our second monument to atheists in foxholes, free-thinking service members, at the Rose Zervik Memorial Garden and Courtyard, here at our headquarters itself, adjoining our Free Thought Hall's new entrance. This is a 7-foot-tall, 500-pound monument almost, made of the same South Dakota granite that Mount Rushmore is carved from, believe it or not. And here's a video of the monument being installed right here at FFRF headquarters. The monument here at Free Thought Hall reads, "In memory of atheists in foxholes and the countless free thinkers who have served this country with honor and distinction, presented by the National Freedom from Religion Foundation, with hope that in the future, humankind may learn to avoid all war."
Right. So about a quarter of all of FFRF's members are veterans or active in the military, which is about the same as the percentage of non-religious members in the military nationwide, 23%. Here's another photo of our memorial, this time with FFRF's executive board member, Joseph Cunningham, who's a World War II veteran. Now, FFRF receives a lot of different complaints from military members and veterans about religious promotion in the military. In fact, back in January, FFRF sent a letter to Secretary of Defense James Mattis outlining some common issues that we see crop up regularly with coerced religious observance in the military setting. So that letter included complaints about scheduled prayers before graduation and before tests, for cadets, cadets being assigned menial tasks if they declined to attend worship services on Sundays, and aggressive proselytization by military chaplains. We do a lot of work with military members and also with veterans. Back in April, we received this response to a letter that we directed to the VA system. This is from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, and it acknowledges that VA medical centers cannot legally coerce veterans who have substance abuse issues into participating in 12-step treatment programs. So we've seen VA facilities embrace 12-step programs like Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and the Matrix program. But these are all decidedly religious, and there need to be alternative programs in place for our non-religious veterans. So that's some progress right there.
Certainly, Sam. And I was wondering, Mattis doesn't have the reputation for being as religious as some of his cabinet colleagues like Betsy DeVos and Ben Carson. Did we receive any response at all from the Pentagon itself?
We received this response from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs.
Okay.
And we consider that to be a resolution of the issue for now.
Sure.
But we invite all veterans to contact us at the Freedom from Religion Foundation if they feel coerced into participating in a 12-step program. Those are the issues that we wanted to highlight. And there is a general lack of awareness that atheists participate in the military. We will be bringing Steven Hewett on to discuss that now. But before that, here's some video from 2 North Carolina news stations to add some background to the controversy that he addressed in King, North Carolina with their Veterans Memorial.
If y'all want to take down the monument, I'm going to fight like heck.
Despite impassioned pleas from the people, the city of King has removed the kneeling soldier monument from the city's Veterans Memorial and repealed a 2010 law establishing a flag lottery that many citizens use to fly a Christian flag at the site. The city council was split on the decision.
Because the intent is not there for anyone to be offended. Because every veteran that memorial honors took an oath of God and country, and they knew what God they were speaking of when they said it.
Back in July, a judge sided with a man who sued the city, saying the memorial violated the separation of church and state. The city council says they initially wanted to fight in court, but ultimately could not because of the high cost of litigation.
This Veterans Memorial, and as veterans we serve this country, we serve the Constitution, and we serve under one flag, and that's the United States flag. To have flags of other religions flying over a memorial implies that everybody at that memorial agrees with that. We have a separation of church and state for a reason. And that separation is, though, that not one religion is put above anybody else's.
So on that note, we want to welcome Steven Hewett. And as we mentioned earlier, Steve is a former police officer and Afghanistan war veteran, and he was the 2015 recipient of the FFRF's Atheists in Foxholes Award. And welcome, Steve. Hi, joining us today. And I must add, on a personal note, Steve, I feel a special kinship for you because I lived in North Carolina for a long time in Chapel Hill and Raleigh in the Triangle area, which is relatively more progressive. But you know, I've been a long-time resident of North Carolina. I know how religious and how traditional the state can be. So
thank you very.
Certainly.
Thank you very much for having me on the show today. I do appreciate it.
Well, Steve, so can you tell us, I mean, a bit more about your legal victory and, which resulted in a triumph for secularism because it removed a very religious statue, from a veterans memorial, a public veterans memorial?
Yeah, it was a good victory, very well-earned victory. We fought for a couple of years on that. Of course, FFRF had written a letter to the City Council as well as ACLU and Americans United, which Americans United took up the case. But there's threefold. There's three issues with this. It was the flag, the kneeling soldier cross, and also the city was promoting Christian services on Memorial and Veterans Day. So there are three elements to the lawsuit, and Judge Beatty ruled on one element, the Establishment Clause, that the city was forbidden from offering any more services at the memorial, which they immediately ceased. But it was a great victory for secularists. Actually, it's a great victory for veterans, because our memorial honors our service and sacrifice of all our veterans and all our service members. It does not honor anybody's religion. And so that was the main issue and the main theme that I was pushing, was that it's inclusive of all, and that's exactly how it should be.
Yeah, people tend to forget that by just having such a sectarian, narrow religious perspective, Steve, that they are actually dishonoring people belonging to minority religions, as well as free thinkers and people who don't believe in any religion. So you're absolutely on target there.
Right. So, I mean, that's the punchline to the story, Steve. But back before you get to the result, what happened when this lawsuit was filed? What was the community reaction?
Oh, the community reaction was very interesting, to say the least. One of the churches, Calvary Baptist Church, led by Reverend Broyhill, they organized a march of 5,000 people marching through King, waving flags. Wow. And they ended up at the memorial itself, where David Gibbs III advised everybody that if anybody disagreed with the Christian flag being on the memorial, that they should encourage them to, they should encourage that individual to leave town. And then there were the threats, of course, on Facebook, Twitter, and so forth, that people want to know why I was still alive. Let's ruin his business. Let's run him out of town. So that you could just feel the love of the Christian community in town. So, my wife and I had to take some measures at the house, put video cameras up. My wife was harassed at work. She was a local school teacher at the time. And then just the general community as a whole, when you would go about town, a few times people would walk up to me, "Oh, you're that guy who took the flag down." What was really disturbing was our local news media came and they showed my house number, the street I lived on. So it definitely put a target on my back. But I wasn't going to be deterred by that. I mean, I had just spent a tour of duty in Afghanistan, and I was not going to be intimidated by people when I come home to be told what religion that I should be or what flag's going to fly in a memorial that represents everybody. And it took, it was a 4-year period from the initial complaint with the city manager, who at that time told me that I was going to burn in hell and answer to God and Jesus Christ for what I was doing. But again, I wasn't going to be deterred. I mean, I was in Afghanistan fighting for our rights, and be damned if somebody's going to tell me that my rights don't count. Yeah,
that's right. Military members all over the country are fighting for our secular constitution and the principles that embody this country, and one of those principles is the separation of religion and government. So that's one that King, North Carolina had to learn the hard way. So what about after the lawsuit? It sounds like there was initially some backlash, and you've experienced some of that. Does that continue to this day? How did it feel to actually win the lawsuit?
Well, to win the case was actually great. I mean, it never actually went to court. We had a meeting with Judge Beatty a week before the actual hearing was to start, and at that time, the Judge Beatty ordered us to go into a room and see if we could work it out. And the questions that he asked it was evident the case was going to go in our direction, and so the city attorney and the representatives capitulated to the terms and basically take the flag down, take the cross down, and of course they'd already been ordered to stop the services. So it was a very good victory. I mean, the atmosphere afterwards, though, I was the most hated person in town, probably the county, and to some degree I still am. A lot of people have come around and seen that it wasn't about me against Christianity or against the flag itself, but the aspect of separation of church and state. But to this day, even now, I'm fighting against the people in this city. The American Legion became part of the lawsuit. And I will say that they illegally became part of the lawsuit because they gave false depositions and false receipts to become a Movant intervener. Since then, the American Legion, I've been attacked by an American Legion member on November 8, 2016, during Election Day. A uniformed member named Ronald Souse got in his truck and ran into me at the election station with his vehicle for the sign I was carrying. Our political sign I was carrying. After that, they trumped up some little charges, kicked me out of the American Legion. Then I had to fight. I was a candidate for city council, and I had to fight to have the election precinct moved from the American Legion to a public building. They fought that all the way. Their commander, Commander Cliff Kilby, is the current commander of the post, who fought that at the Board of Elections. He lied at the Board of Elections about me. And this year, this past January, he ran for sheriff in an adjacent county, and I made a Facebook page, Veterans Against Kilby for Sheriff. And he took out cyberstalking charges on me, which I am now still currently fighting, and a 50C no contact order. It's a restraining order. We go to court in 2 weeks on that. So for the last 6 months, they tried to stifle my freedom of speech. And at the while I was politicking for the sheriff that I wanted to win, who, by the way, won the nomination for the Democratic Party, Kilby was at the election precincts, and he was pointing out to people, that's the atheist who took the Christian flag down off the memorial, and see who he's backing. Well, I was backing actually a Christian candidate. And so it just shows I'm not pushing my atheism on anybody. I supported a Christian who was running for sheriff, but Kilby himself was always pointing out to everybody coming by, that's the atheist. That's the man who took the Christian flag down. So even today, I'm still fighting this. Yeah,
that's something that people, we get that a lot, this misunderstanding that protecting separation of religion and government, people conflate that with promoting atheism, as if somehow there's no middle ground, there's no government neutrality possible, that either the government's promoting Christianity or some other religion, or it's promoting atheism. People don't seem to recognize that there is a neutrality possible, and that's what the Constitution demands.
Exactly.
And yeah, wow, Steve, you've been through a lot, and thank you for persevering. And a couple of larger issues that you were trying to sort of impress upon people. One we have spoken about, the separation of church and state, and how that's the underpinning of our Constitution. But the other is, of course, Steve, to let people know that there are free thinkers who are service members and veterans. So how important do you think it is for people to know that there are indeed atheists in Foxholes?
Well, that's a very good topic of discussion, because many people believe that our military is a Christian military, especially the evangelicals in the town that I live in and throughout the country believe that our army is a Christian army, and it's the army of the right. But when I serve, there's many atheists. Most don't speak up because, unfortunately, your evaluations can reflect your religious, which they're not supposed to. But overall, though, the atheist community in the military is actually growing quite a bit. Fort Bragg, for example, has a MASH. And over in Kentucky, they also have a MASH unit there, and that's a military atheist secular humanist organizations. So it's growing quite a bit, and they're being more recognized in the military, but we still have to fight on bases for our rights to use facilities there, denied the use of facilities to be able to have meetings. A lot of chaplains try to deny those rights, and unfortunately, they're able to win in those situations. But more and more atheists are starting to speak up in the military and are being recognized, and so it's going to change. It's going to take a while to change, but we will stand, and we are in foxholes, regardless of what people wish to believe.
Right, Steve. On the question of chaplains, military chaplains, what do you think about this whole process of trying to get the first humanist chaplain into the military?
Oh, well, I actually met him a few years ago. Jason Trofe had a fundraiser in D.C. that I went to and I spoke at. And that's exactly what we need, is to have secular humanist chaplains in the military, because you as an atheist, when you go talk to a chaplain, the first thing they talk about is religion. Let's pray together. And that's the worst thing that they can do. So we should have the ability to be able to speak to somebody who believes along the same lines we do and understands our position, that God isn't the answer to everything. We believe in reality, we believe in rational thought, and that when we have problems and things that we need to talk about, we need to be able to go to somebody and discuss that without being judged. And unfortunately, throughout the nation now in the military, chaplains are speaking up even more so than they ever did before when I was in the military, when I was active duty. It seems like especially evangelicals are pushing their issues just like they do in non-military or civilian aspect. In every aspect, that it's our rights, our beliefs. We should be able to deny you access, especially like recently a couple was denied access to a retreat. And the chaplain was disciplined for it, but I believe it's ADF or First Liberty is fighting that and saying that the chaplain should not. His rights trump the individual's rights, which is not the case.
Right.
I must say, Steve, I love the acronym MASH that freethinkers are using for the groups in the military. That's my all-time favorite television show, possibly, and that's really clever. So we'll now go to the Q&A portion, and Sam will be handling the questions that we're receiving.
Steve, if you want to stay on, I haven't read all of the questions yet, but it seems like some of this is at least directed toward you. So let's see what we have here, and perhaps the three of us can figure out who's going to answer what.
Sure.
So this first question is from Carl Mass. This one's for us. What can I do if I have a complaint, and can I remain anonymous because I'm afraid of the blowback? So if you, whether you have a complaint about religion in the military, the VA, or another government promotion of religion, public school, contact us through our website, ffrf.org, and you can report a violation right there. And one of our staff attorneys will review your information. And then, of course, if we are able to act on that and write a letter of complaint to the government entity involved, you will be kept anonymous. That is our policy. We don't reveal your identifying information to the government entity.
And I must add to that, Sam, that we've been, depending on your perspective, absolutely awesome or notorious about doing that. We really believe in safeguarding the privacy of our respondents and people sort of who approach us, and even our members. Yeah.
Right. And that's really important because, Steve, as you know, some people live in sort of aggressively religious areas where they don't necessarily feel comfortable doing what Steve did and outing themselves as an atheist in their community and having to go to the trouble of mounting cameras on their car, house, and person. Some complainants that we have obviously have children in public schools and fear for their children being bullied and things like that. So yeah, we take anonymity very seriously. All right, next question. This is from Corey Melton. As a humanist, I'm a fervent pacifist. I'm wondering if any veterans out there struggle with their duties and their secular values. And Steve,
Yeah, that's a great
perhaps
question.
we can kick that to you.
Well, I don't think that they struggle because, you know, if you're a pacifist in the military, you're usually assigned to the chaplain's office, that type of thing, or you're assigned to a non-combat position so that you won't have to make that decision on taking somebody's life. But, you know, it's an individual situation where you have to decide what you're going to do. You know, pacifists can serve in our military, but I think, and I can't speak for everybody, but I do think that the majority of atheists who are in the military, you know, we take an oath to serve our country, to serve our nation, and to defend it. And unfortunately, that defense sometimes takes a position where you have to take someone else's life.
Right. All right. So the next question for Steve again comes from Irene Gardner, who first thanks you for your service. And then says she didn't actually know that people could be punished for being an atheist in the military. That's crazy. How many people were openly atheist in your experience, Steve, when you served? And would you encourage atheists to come out while serving?
Well, there weren't a lot who were open. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where you know by how people are talking in discussions, and then you step aside and you have a private discussion. And a lot of people aren't open. And the reason why is what I discussed earlier, is that when you have evaluations by your supervisors, unfortunately, they can retaliate against you in those evaluations and give you a poor one that would possibly not give you a position to be able to be promoted in. So for someone to come out, they really have to look and decide for themselves, am I able to do that? How is it going to affect my life, especially in the military? Is it going to affect my promotions, or again, my family, you know, and children? I mean, everything that was just discussed earlier, you have to make those decisions and think about, because it's going to affect your life drastically. Regardless what people say in the military, that they believe that everyone is equal, it's really not that way.
Yeah, that's something that I hear again and again from the complainants that we get who are in the military, that there is just, in every action and every interaction with superiors, an underlying coerciveness to what's going on, because they really do have such an impact on your potential promotion. Sure. or even just your day-to-day existence in the military. Okay, so this next question comes from Shelley McGann, who asks, did you come out as an atheist when you joined the military, or did it take a while for you to be comfortable doing so?
Great question.
Well, I was actually a full-blown Christian when I was in the military.
Wow.
I was, you know, these little Treks that have all these little cartoon figures. Boy, I was handing them out to everybody. I was Holy Joe, and I was witnessing to my friends, telling them they're going to hell if they don't believe in God, and well, I tell you what, and I was a licensed minister at that time.
Wow, that's interesting, Steve.
Yeah, so, but it was during that time that I also started to see that this is not what I thought it was. I had a lot of personal problems with my family at that time. I was stationed overseas. And I'm here praying to a God, and those prayers didn't get answered at all. And I'm going like, oh, wait a minute, I'm serving you, and so forth. So anyhow, long story short, that's when I started losing my faith, and I really started looking at scriptures and then understanding this is not what it's really supposed to be, and or not reality. And so, I guess you would say that's when I lost my faith, was in the military.
Sure, sure.
But later in life, you know, in studying the Bible and so forth, continued going to church. And so it's about 10 years ago when I finally decided, okay, this is not real. And let's start living my life each day as if it's my last day on earth, because I've got to enjoy every moment that I'm living. And so,
yeah,
that's basically my story there.
Yeah, no, that's great. And one thing that I've always been curious about is for Christians in the military, whether they conflate their service to our country with the service to their God. That's something that I think we've seen actually serve the interests of those we oppose in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, terrorist cells who are able to point to things like Christian military members distributing Bibles while in uniform, as pointing to that and being able to say, these Americans are trying to impart a different religion onto us than we've grown up with, and this is really a holy war. Do you have thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, I agree with you. I wouldn't say it's prevalent, but it certainly there's quite a few, mainly the really evangelical Christians that are in your units. They're the ones that really will push the issue, and they do believe, and they talk about it quite often, that this is our army is a Christian army. This is a Christian nation, and our God is on the right side, and we're on that right side. And that's just not the case. And when I was in Afghanistan, there was a couple forward operation bases that got in trouble for putting up crosses on the chapel at the units. Yeah. And they're believing, okay, we're here fighting the right. We've got the right God. They've got the wrong God. And it's quite prevalent in the military among the evangelicals. The more moderate Christians, you don't hear too much about that, and most of them shy away from those type of conversations.
All right. Thank you for that. We do have one final question here from Corey Melton again, who says, it is astounding to me that the military doesn't already have a team of humanist chaplains. I live in a military neighborhood. Do you know if it's possible for me to get involved with the base and help out these secular service members? I'd love to get involved.
Oh, yes. In fact, you could probably go on Facebook and do a search. Like I said earlier, MASH, Fort Rucker, also Fort Hood. You can get in contact with some of those people. They have a network that they can probably connect you with. And it's growing across the country. So look online, and I'm sure you can find somebody there to be able to help you out, to be part of a local group. And they invite civilians to come in as well to be part of their organization.
Well, that's all for our Ask an Atheist show today. Thank you so much, Steven Hewett, for Skyping into our friendly atheist studio here in Madison, Wisconsin, all the way from North Carolina. And next week, we are actually off for our Ask an Atheist show, but we will be back again and join you live on June 6th. Two quick items to mention. Firstly, in November, early November, 2nd through the 4th, we have our annual get-together, our convention in San Francisco, with luminaries like Salman Rushdie, Cecile Richards, Adam Savage, John Delancey, Sarah Heather, Leanne Lord, Julia Sweeney, and many more. And the second point that we wanted to make a note of is, if you want to receive FFRF text alerts on your smartphone, just text FFRF, of course, for Freedom from Religion Foundation, to 52886. Again, FFRF to 52886, and data rates may apply. And thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful Memorial Day, and we'll see you back here live on June 6th in 2 weeks. Thank you.